concept assembly line, where ideas get to work. It's become something of a national riddle. Why does life keep getting more expensive, even as technology gets better, jobs get more automated, and the stock market touches ever loftier highs? Wages inch up, but rent gallops. Electricity bills climb, even in a nation blessed with natural gas, wind, and solar. Politicians promise prosperity, but voters feel pinched. Underneath the anxiety lies a fundamental truth. The United States has no coherent strategy for ensuring the essentials of life: housing, energy, transit, food, education are affordable and abundant for all. What we need is not just another interest rate adjustment or tariff spat. We need to build again. We need industrial policy. Industrial policy is the art and strategy of shaping what a nation produces, where it produces it, and how it builds its future capacity to meet collective needs. It's about planning with purpose, channeling public and private resources, not just to stimulate growth in the abstract, but to build the physical, technological, and human infrastructure of an economy that works for people. To understand what industrial policy is, we first need to understand what it's not. Monetary policy, managed by central banks like the Federal Reserve, governs the money supply and interest rates. Its primary tools, raising or lowering interest rates, buying or selling bonds, are blunt instruments aimed at steering inflation and employment levels. When inflation is high, rates go up to cool spending. When recession looms, rates drop to encourage borrowing and investment. But monetary policy doesn't build anything. It can make borrowing cheaper, but it cannot decide what's built or where. It's like giving someone a lower mortgage rate without asking whether we're building affordable homes or luxury condos. Fiscal policy, on the other hand, is the domain of Congress and the Treasury. It encompasses how much the government spends and how much it taxes. Fiscal policy is inherently political. It reflects the nation's priorities. When the government sends out stimulus checks, raises Social Security benefits, or cuts corporate taxes, it's using fiscal policy. This can be powerful in addressing demand during downturns or redistributing income. But again, without direction, fiscal policy can become a collection of disconnected line items. Helpful perhaps, but not transformational. Industrial policy, by contrast, is directive. It answers the deeper question: what kind of economy do we want to build? It's not just about spending money, but about targeting that money towards sectors, regions, technologies, and labor markets that advance long-term national goals. It says, let's invest in domestic semiconductor manufacturing, not just because it's high-tech, but because it safeguards economic sovereignty. Let's build a national green energy backbone, not just to cut emissions, but to lower household costs and spur high-wage work. Historically, the US has leaned heavily on monetary and fiscal levers, often ignoring the industrial steering wheel. But in moments of crisis, war, depression, space race, the country has pivoted toward industrial policy with stunning results. The New Deal, the arsenal of democracy, the moon landing, the interstate highway system. Each was a deliberate act of economic shaping. Today's crises, from climate to inequality to deindustrialization, demand a similar response. Simply adjusting interest rates or issuing rebates won't be enough. We need to ask, once again, what kind of economy we're building, and pick up the tools to actually build it. Energy is not just one expense among many. It is the foundation of modern economic life. Every good we consume, every service we rely on, every journey we take is downstream of energy. It powers our homes, our data centers, our food systems, our water treatment plants, our hospitals. If money makes the world go round, energy spins the gears. Yet we treat energy policy as if it exists in a silo. One year we push for fracking. The next, we hand out rooftop solar credits. A hurricane hits, and we scramble to bury power lines. But all too often, we miss the larger economic truth. Affordable, reliable, low-carbon energy is the single most powerful lever we have for improving the standard of living in this country. The price of electricity is built into rent. It's embedded in groceries. It governs the cost of public infrastructure, the viability of manufacturing, the profit margin of every small business running an HVAC system. And in this light, the return on energy investment isn't just theoretical, it's profoundly tangible. A coherent industrial energy strategy would attack high energy costs at their roots rather than subsidize their symptoms. This starts with reducing our dependence on volatile fossil fuel supply chains and aging, inefficient infrastructure. The solution isn't any one source. It's building a mosaic of resilient, regionally appropriate systems. Geothermal retrofits of decommissioned coal plants can tap superheated steam far below the Earth's surface, offering consistent baseload power without emissions or fuel costs. Advanced nuclear technologies, such as small modular reactors, offer high-density, low-footprint solutions for energy reliability, especially in regions lacking sun, wind, or geothermal viability. Aggressive solar and wind deployments, linked to modernized transmission lines, can take advantage of geographic diversity, sending excess power from the sun-baked southwest or wind-rich plains to dense urban centers. Grid-scale battery storage and hydrogen electrolysis systems can smooth intermittency, storing surplus power for peak demand. The cost of building these systems is not trivial, but neither is the cost of doing nothing. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, the average American household spends over $2,200 per year on utilities and fuel. Multiply that by 122 million households, and we're looking at an economy-wide energy burden of nearly $300 billion annually, just on household-level consumption, before we even consider industry, agriculture, and transportation. Now imagine if we could cut that in half. Every dollar spent on strategic energy infrastructure does more than provide electricity. It creates jobs, attracts manufacturing, frees up household budgets, and reduces inflationary pressure across the economy. Consider this. Each $1 million invested in clean energy projects, wind, solar, geothermal, creates between 2 to 10 direct jobs, according to the Political Economy Research Institute. But the total economic impact is broader. Those workers spend wages in their communities, suppliers hire more staff, downstream businesses expand. Households that save $1,000 per year in energy costs don't stash it in offshore accounts. They spend it locally on food, childcare, school supplies, and repairs. That spending keeps dollars circulating, creating a ripple effect of demand. Energy-intensive sectors like manufacturing become more viable in the U.S. when power is cheap and reliable, reversing decades of offshoring and creating a new foundation for industrial renewal. Cities and states with abundant clean energy attract the industries of the future. Data centers, chip fabrication plants, EV battery manufacturers, vertical farms. Energy is not just a cost, it's a competitive advantage. This is the real multiplier effect that conventional fiscal debates often ignore. Energy infrastructure doesn't just stimulate the economy in a short-term Keynesian sense. It transforms the economy structurally, making prosperity more affordable and resilient over time. Modern monetary theory offers a framework for understanding how this can be financed. The federal government, as the issuer of the dollar, is not revenue-constrained in the way households or states are. What constrains it is real resources, workers, materials, equipment, technology. If those are available, the government can mobilize them, especially in areas where the private sector has underinvested due to long payback timelines or high upfront risks. And nowhere is that underinvestment more apparent than in energy. Private capital avoids multi-decade grid projects or geothermal exploration with uncertain drilling results. But government can and should step in where markets fail, because the payoff is immense. Cheap, clean, abundant energy lowers the cost of everything else. That's not inflationary, it's deflationary. It expands the supply side of the economy in a way that monetary tweaks or tax incentives never could. In that light, industrial energy policy is not a cost center, it's a public wealth engine. In a time of climate urgency, rising inequality, and economic uncertainty, a federal jobs guarantee may sound utopian. But in the context of industrial policy, especially one centered on clean energy, it is not just plausible, it's practical. Modern monetary theory, MMT, reframes the debate around government spending, not by ignoring inflation, but by showing how full employment can be a tool for stability, not a threat to it. At its core, a jobs guarantee is about mobilizing idle resources, millions of workers on the sidelines of the labor market, and putting them to productive use. It is not a welfare program, it is not a stopgap. It is a standing offer. Anyone who wants to work can work in service of the public good. But what would those jobs be? That's where the alignment with clean energy becomes not only possible, but transformative. Clean energy deployment is inherently regional, labor-intensive, and infrastructure-heavy, and the labor needs are immense. Transmission lines must be laid. Rooftop solar must be installed. Older homes must be weatherized and retrofitted. Wind turbines must be maintained in the plains, geothermal systems drilled in the west, EV charging networks built across every corridor. These are tasks that cannot be offshored and often won't be undertaken by private firms without subsidies or regulatory mandates. A jobs guarantee allows the federal government to fill in the gaps and do it fast. Because energy resources are distributed unevenly across the US, the clean energy economy must be regional by design. This is a feature, not a bug. A national jobs guarantee program could be locally administered and regionally tailored, with each geography focusing on its comparative energy advantage. Appalachia and the Mountain West. Reclaiming coal country with geothermal conversions, carbon sequestration infrastructure, and energy-efficient retrofits of abandoned housing stock. Midwest and Great Plains. Large-scale wind turbine deployment, transmission corridor construction, and local battery manufacturing assembly lines. Southwest and California. Rooftop solar, desert-based solar farms, EV charging infrastructure, and wildfire resilience work. Northeast and Upper Midwest. Urban building electrification, smart grid upgrades, cold weather heat pump installation, and regional rail electrification. Gulf Coast and Southeast. Coastal wind projects, green hydrogen pilot hubs, and industrial decarbonization, retrofits of refineries and chemical plants. Rather than a one-size-fits-all job program, this would function as a federal employment corps with regional branches shaped by the physical, environmental, and economic needs of each area. Local governments and institutions, community colleges, unions, municipal planning boards would help identify labor needs and coordinate training. And because these are public jobs with federally funded wages, employers in the private sector would no longer hold all the bargaining power. The jobs guarantee becomes a de facto minimum wage and benefits standard, not through legal mandate alone, but through competitive practice. No more race to the bottom. Instead, a race to raise standards. One of the most significant bottlenecks in the energy transition is not technology. It's workforce readiness. We simply don't have enough electricians, HVAC techs, welders, line workers, and construction crews to build out the infrastructure we need. A jobs guarantee could solve this not only by hiring, but by training. Imagine a hybrid model: public employment plus vocational education. Workers sign up for a 2-year government job in energy deployment, during which they receive free training, on-the-job experience, and transferable certifications. It becomes a pipeline into both public and private sector work, seeding a future-ready labor force and addressing the very labor shortages that could otherwise derail the energy transition. At the same time, the program would function as a stabilizer. In times of economic downturn, more workers would enter the public jobs program. In times of economic boom, they would be hired away by the private sector. This ebb and flow would help smooth business cycles, lower involuntary unemployment, and give workers dignity, mobility, and choice. Critics of job guarantees often caricature them as make-work programs, people digging ditches and filling them back in. But when tied to a national industrial strategy, the work is anything but meaningless. It's building the literal foundation of a livable, affordable, and low-carbon future. It's the installation of a heat pump that lets a retiree afford winter heating. It's the rewiring of a home so it can support EV charging. It's the workforce that lays the transmission line linking rural wind power to city grids. And beyond the physical output, it's the sense of shared national purpose that comes from millions of people building, together, something real. The kind of dignity that's hard to find in a gig economy, the kind of cohesion that markets alone cannot produce. One of the most common objections to expansive public investment and a federally guaranteed jobs program is the fear of runaway inflation. And the concern is understandable. In a world where prices have already surged for housing, groceries, healthcare, and gas, it seems counterintuitive to suggest that more government spending could lead to less inflation. But that conclusion rests on an outdated model, one that treats all government outlays as demand shocks and all deficits as inherently inflationary. Modern monetary theory offers a different lens. It doesn't deny inflation risks, it refocuses them. Inflation is not primarily a function of dollars in circulation. It's a function of real resource constraints. How many workers are available, how much equipment we have, how efficiently we can produce and deliver the goods and services people need. If you increase the money supply without increasing the real capacity of the economy to produce, you get inflation. But if you increase productive capacity in tandem with spending, inflationary pressures can be neutralized or even reversed. This is what MMT calls spending to the limit of productive capacity. Traditional economic models treat the government's budget like a household's checkbook, but a sovereign currency issuer like the United States is never operationally constrained by how much money it has. It is constrained by what it can buy without crowding out the rest of the economy. The question is not, can we afford it? The question is, do we have the workers, machines, and materials to carry it out without overheating demand? Let's take a real-world example. Suppose the federal government launches a major program to retrofit homes with electric heat pumps, a key strategy for decarbonization and lowering household energy bills. If we already have trained installers, surplus manufacturing capacity, and idle construction workers, the program could be deployed rapidly with minimal inflationary pressure. But if there are no technicians, no equipment, and supply chains are tight, prices will spike, not because the money exists, but because the capacity does not. In this model, inflation is a signal, not of overspending, but of undersupplying. It tells policymakers where bottlenecks are forming and where targeted investment is needed. This distinction is critical. A government check mailed to every household is a form of demand-side stimulus. It increases consumption without building anything. But a government program that trains HVAC technicians, builds out manufacturing lines, and funds factory-scale procurement is increasing both supply and demand in lockstep. And when that newly trained workforce produces real output, heat pump installations, home weatherization, solar panels on roofs, it lowers the structural cost of living. These are not one-time boosts. They are compounding assets. In this framework, inflation isn't ignored. It's managed at the source. Programs scale up as capacity scales up. Public procurement is used to stabilize prices. Governments can negotiate large contracts, buy at scale, and provide predictable demand that helps stabilize private pricing. And most importantly, public employment offers a counter-cyclical tool. When inflation rises, the government can temporarily slow project rollouts or reduce wage pressure by holding steady rather than flooding the economy with cash. When inflation is understood as a mismatch between money and capacity, not as a moral failing of too much spending, we can begin to treat it more precisely. It becomes a dial, not a red light. This doesn't mean the government should fund everything. It means it should fund what expands the real economy: more housing, more transit, more energy, more childcare, more public goods. These are not merely expenses. They are investments in anti-inflationary infrastructure. In a world where corporate price gouging and supply shocks are increasingly responsible for inflation spikes, building resilient domestic supply chains, especially in energy, becomes not just good economics, but smart monetary hygiene. An economy that produces what it consumes is less vulnerable to external shocks and less prone to domestic price spirals. The limits are real, but they're physical, not financial. We are constrained by the number of electricians we can train, the copper we can mine and recycle, the wind turbines we can install, and the homes we can insulate. These are material constraints, not budgetary ones. The key is not austerity, it's alignment. Aligning public spending with real-world output. Aligning job programs with workforce gaps. Aligning energy strategy with regional strengths. Aligning what we want as a society with what we're actually willing to build. That's the inflation control model we've never really tried. Not one that fears spending, but one that understands how to direct it. Every economy tells a story, not just of dollars and cents, but of values. What do we prioritize? Who do we protect? Where do we invest our collective resources? And where do we retreat? For the last 4 decades, the story of the American economy has been one of retreat. From industrial production, from long-term planning, from shared prosperity. We outsourced our factories. We deregulated our utilities. We let housing and transit systems decay. We came to believe that the public sphere was something to be minimized, not modernized. Industrial policy is a way back, not to the past, but to a future worth living in. It is a reaffirmation that the public has a role in shaping markets, not just reacting to them. That government is not a brake on progress, but a vehicle for building it. If we choose to drive, the stakes go far beyond energy bills and employment statistics. They touch the core of what kind of society we wish to be. Economically, industrial policy is a chance to reclaim sovereignty, to produce what we consume, to stabilize supply chains, to ensure that the next generation of prosperity is not contingent on fragile geopolitics or monopolized markets. It is how we avoid being price takers in a world we once helped build. Civically, it is a chance to repair the frayed contract between citizen and state. In an era of deep distrust and institutional fatigue, industrial policy gives people a tangible reason to believe again. When a federal jobs program trains your cousin as a wind technician, when new grid infrastructure makes your lights flicker less, when your heating bill drops because of a government-subsidized heat pump, you don't just see policy, you feel it. it becomes personal. Democracy starts to mean something again. Environmentally, industrial policy is our only shot at a livable planet. We will not solve climate change through carbon markets alone. We must build our way out. That means steel and labor and land and capital, marshaled on a scale worthy of the challenge. Every delay makes the problem more expensive. Every underinvestment in clean energy is a commitment to higher future costs, greater instability, and deeper inequality. Industrial policy is climate realism. And democratically, this is about power. Who gets to shape the economy? For too long, it has been the invisible hand, code for the very visible hands of capital, lobbyists, and incumbents. A robust industrial policy says the public too has agency. The nurse in Nebraska, the factory worker in Toledo, the teacher in Tucson. They have a stake in the direction of the country and a role in building it. This is not ideology, it's infrastructure. It's housing and power and transit and water. It's the mechanics of modern life, made affordable and resilient. We stand at a turning point. The old tools, interest rates, tax credits, tariffs, can't dig us out of this moment alone. We need to decide what kind of economy we're building and for whom. And then we need to build it with clear intention, regional strategies, and democratic accountability. The good news is that we already have the resources. We have the land. We have the labor. We have the money. What we've lacked is the will and the narrative. This video is that narrative, not a call for top-down control or 5-year plans, but a sober, determined reassertion of public purpose. An invitation to treat energy not as a liability, but as a launchpad. To see jobs not as statistics, but as the fabric of a good society. To understand inflation not as a wall, but as a signpost, guiding us toward what we must scale and where we must invest. In the end, industrial policy is not just about building things. It's about building belonging, dignity, security, capacity, and ultimately, freedom, the real kind, grounded not in abstraction, but in the daily ability to live well and affordably in the place you call home. Let's stop reacting. Let's start constructing. Let's build again. This video is part of a broader project to reimagine public policy for real people, grounded in modern monetary theory, committed to abundance over austerity, and focused on rebuilding the freedom infrastructure of everyday life. If my work resonates with you, share it. Subscribe on YouTube for more multi-format content. Together, we can reclaim what was once built and build it back better.